Deputy Paul Murphy, please.
Orla. Taoiseach, children with spina bifida have been failed scandalously by this state. Now their families are faced with horrifying revelations that some of their children who went through surgeries in Temple Street did not get the care that they needed. They had extremely high rates of complications, and most scandalously, 3 had unlicensed, non-medical grade springs inserted into them. I spoke to one of the families over the weekend, and it'd be fair to say that they are in absolute turmoil. They don't feel listened to so far. And this scandal is not only about the actions of one surgeon, it's about a governance process which would allow it to happen, where this would still be happening if it wasn't for one brave whistleblower speaking out and a journalist who exposed it in an article on The Ditch. Now we have a second external review after a first internal review and a first external review, essentially because the first external review did not uncover the use of the springs, and it took The Ditch to highlight this. This review must get it right. At the heart of the process must be the families. Their views have to be taken on board. So the terms of reference have to be amended to include all CHI children's operations. There must be a spinal surgeon on the external review team. The internal review, which has already been published, which has already taken place into spinal operations in Crumlin, must be published. But I want to focus my question on when the government knew about it, because the Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly, has been quoted as saying his department only became aware of it in August, and I don't understand how that can be the case. On the 10th of May, I asked a parliamentary question to the Minister asking whether all implants used were appropriately licensed. On the 25th of May, I got an answer from CHI to say to their best of their knowledge, all spinal implants were CE approved and licensed appropriately. We know now that that was not the case. Why was the "to the best of our knowledge" there? I asked again in June, and I got the same answer without the "to the best of our knowledge." On the 13th of July, I asked the Minister for Health how many spring implants have been used in Temple Street Hospital, how many have been removed, how many failed in situ. I asked whether they were CE marked, and if not, what governance process oversaw and permitted their use. That was on the 13th of July, but that's not all, Taoiseach. Taoiseach, on the 5th of July, I asked you about this. I spoke to you in the Dáil about the use of unlicensed, the allegation that unlicensed implants have been used in children. And you said to me in response that you didn't know about it, but you would let the Minister know it was raised in the Chamber and get back to the Deputy. I didn't hear anything back from you or the Minister. So what did you do after the 5th of July?
Thank you,
I raised with you this extremely serious allegation. You said you were going to speak to the Minister for Health. Did you tell the Minister about it, and when, and then what action was taken by the government?
Thank you, Deputy Murphy. Taoiseach, please.
Thanks, Deputy. Just at the outset, I want to once again take this opportunity to acknowledge that this is a cause of great anxiety for a lot of parents and a lot of families, and indeed very vulnerable children attending these services. A comprehensive patient safety review and assurance process has been commissioned into Paediatric Orthopaedic Surgery Service, and there is a medical council complaint which is currently being considered. A UK expert, Mr. Salvador Nagayam, has been commissioned to lead an external review following identification of a number of specific clinical and patient safety concerns. These concerns related to clinical outcomes of some complex spinal surgery, including what appears to be a higher than normal incidence of post-operative complications and infections, as well as 2 serious surgical incidents. I think it's important to say that we don't have all the facts yet, and therefore it is important that we don't jump to any conclusions at this stage. It is why the Minister and the HSC have sought this external review. It was clear that they did not feel the existing reports were sufficient, and they did not, for example, report the use of these non-CE marked metal springs, and it is a matter of concern that didn't come up in the 2 reviews which were done and have now been published. 2 reports, as you know, one internal and external, have been commissioned, and the Minister and Chief Executive have made it very clear that the initial position that was adopted by the hospital groups which was that the reports wouldn't be published, wasn't acceptable, and the Minister of Health will make statements later today, and I understand there'll also be a joint Oireachtas committee hearing, which will allow further discussion of this. To answer your detailed question, Deputy, when did the government know? If you mean the government is the Cabinet. There's been no Cabinet memo on this so far. There may be one forthcoming, and I can't answer definite questions about timelines within the HSE or the Department of Health, but I'm sure they can. In terms of the issue which you raised with me, I'll have to check, but our standard practice when something is raised in this chamber with me on any given day, and many things are, that is then passed on to the relevant minister for a reply. But Deputy, and I think it's a fair question to ask as well, I certainly first heard definitively about non-medical advices being used in surgery, which I was shocked to hear, quite frankly, and only heard about that maybe in the past week or so. If you had, yeah, but you didn't pass on any detail, any information out. You certainly didn't to me. Maybe it did to other people. But if you had that kind of information weeks and months ago, Deputy, maybe you didn't. But if you did, you should have passed it on.
I heard the allegation that unlicensed implants were being used in April. And so I did what is appropriate, and I asked the Minister whether this was happening. And the response I got from CHI twice was to say, no, this is not happening. And then I went back to the person who was alleging this to me with more specifics, and I came with very, very specific parliamentary questions on the 13th of July about how many spring implants have been used, how many have been removed, how many have been failed in situ, and so on. So at the very, very latest, the government or the minister knows about it on the 13th of July. That is at the very, very latest. And the question is, what does the government do at that point of time? It doesn't make sense that the external review didn't uncover the use of springs. And I'll tell you why. Because there is a reference to springs in the internal review. It says it right there. I've checked. There is no legitimate authorised use of springs for these sort of surgeries. So the reference to springs right there in the internal review should have caused alarm bells to go off in terms of the external review and ensure that this was actually investigated. So I want a commitment from the Taoiseach that the external review is now going to be done properly, which means expanding it to include all CHI operations. It means ensuring that there's a spinal surgeon on the external review. But also, Taoiseach, you have to come, you can see how it's important that I raised with you on the 5th of July. You are now saying that the normal practice would be to pass it on to the Minister, and that the Minister says he didn't know about it until August.
Taoiseach.
Deputy, my understanding is that PQs were submitted by you in your name back in July. The Department of Health was not aware of this at the time, did pass on the queries to the HSE, and that is how the issue at least came to light. The allegations were passed on by you, but by means of a PQ. It was then passed on to the HSE. They made inquiries, and that is how the information came to light. Exactly the exact dates I don't want to give you now because I don't know them for certain, and I don't want to be inadvertently misleading the Dáil. In terms of the review, we'll certainly take on board any suggestions that people have in relation to the review. It is important that we get it right. I think if we were to extend it to all surgery happening in all 3 sites, that would take a very long time to do. We're talking appendixes, we're talking minor surgery. I'm not sure if that actually is the right approach. This is about spinal surgery, and we need to make, and as far as we know, one surgeon. I think if we expand it out to every surgery done by every surgeon in all 3 major paediatric hospitals, we wouldn't be coming back here with an answer for perhaps years. And I'm not sure that would be the best approach, but of course I'm not going to rule it out at this point. And what I have done, having discussed with Mr Donnelly yesterday, is issued an invitation to the advocacy groups to meet with us together later in the week. There are 4, possibly 5 groups, so it's going to require a bit of logistics to get it right, but keen to meet them all and keen to meet them together. And I'm keen to hear what they have to say about this, and we will take that on board before making decisions.
Deputy Michael Lowry, please.